So we are thrilled to be here. And I am so excited, team, tonight to be here with Megan Rath. I'm going to introduce her in just a minute. But I bring you scientists all the time to the No More, Do Mores. And Megan is our first athlete that we are pulling into our members only No More, Do More. And the coolest thing about Megan is, well, besides the fact that she's a super badass mountain climber, is that she has been using our therapies for several years now to help her do this incredible feat that she does. So let's get started. We're going to talk about how Megan climbed Mount Manaslu and used Restore to conquer the mountain. So we're going to use the deck tonight to walk you through some of the ways that Megan used our Restore therapies. But I just wanted to remind you that this members only No More Do More is such an awesome part of your membership. And it's just a big thank you for being a Restore member. This is an exclusive benefit just for your membership, so nobody else is invited. And really, we do this to make sure that you are connected with our industry experts on science-based education, choosing the right therapies and services, informing your day-to-day. And you will hear Megan tonight talk about how she uses our therapies not only to get up the mountains, but also in her day-to-day, and really to think about how to become empowered in your own wellness journey. Just a reminder, we're going to talk about some medical stuff tonight, but I am a PhD, not an MD. So any of the information that's provided in this webinar is for educational purposes and not intended as medical advice. Any suggestions or recommendations that come out of tonight are based on general principles that we know how our therapies work and may not be suitable for every individual. So it's really important for you to consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your regimen. You all know me, psyched to be here. I'm Dr. Rachel. I'm the Chief Science Officer of Restore Hyper Wellness. I have been training in the human performance and longevity space, working with athletes like Megan for a long time. So I am just so psyched to now bring her to you. So we're going to start with Megan's story. We're going to look at how she's trained with also working a full-time job, her routine at Restore. We'll look at the science behind the stack that she uses and how she's using our therapies to help recover. And then we'll think about real-world takeaways, and you will get to ask Megan some questions. So Megan, thank you for being here. I am so thrilled to introduce you. You are an incredible athlete. You're a motivational speaker. You have a full-time job as a VP in industry, actually very related to what we do at Restore. So I'm going to stop talking. Who are you, Megan? How did you find us? And tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I actually stumbled on Restore back in 2020. And I came to you during the pandemic when I had knee surgery. And so I think a lot of people can appreciate I had just turned 40. I'm now 45. And I think people get away with things, whatever it might be, until you don't. And that number for me was 40. And so I pushed really hard for a very long time. I did collegiate sports, field hockey and lacrosse at a Division I level. I played 10 years of squash. I did 10 years of half distance Ironman and an Olympic distance Ironman or triathlon. And then I got into climbing by random chance encounter back in 2016. And so I think constantly pushing the envelope, you think as you get older, like, this is just part of the game, aches and pains. I mean, I felt like I've been dealing with this for a very long time, probably since I was a teenager, right? Like overuse, everything is an overuse injury. And so, like I said, in 2020, I ended up having knee surgery, my first knee surgery on my right knee, and I don't have cartilage on my patellas. So I had an injury back on my left knee when I was 27, something random and stupid, but that turned into be a big thing. And then the right side was more overuse. And so what they did basically was at that time was they just cleaned up the cartilage defect, cleaned out another part of my knee, but everything else is in good shape. Really, the patella was the problem. And so I had learned about cryotherapy as the first therapy for me because has all of that inflammation, that inflammatory properties to help cool things down. And so I was in Charleston at the time because COVID had happened, the second round where they shut everything down.
Remember.
And so I was down in Charleston. So I actually found out about you guys down in the West Ashley, Charleston location. And I started with the cryotherapy and I was instantly hooked, right? You feel great afterwards. The inflammation would go down, the swelling. And then it was a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, right? So started with the cryotherapy, then I got into the Normatec compression boots. Then it was the red lights, then it was the sauna. And I was later to the game with the IVs because I was intimidated. It kind of looked funny, like sitting in a drip bar kind of a thing. And I was really intimidated by it because it wasn't something that I had been exposed to. And I didn't have any friends in my network doing it. So it was new to me. So, like, again, you start with something and you kind of add a little bit more and you add a little bit more. And in COVID, what else were we doing but staying home? And so this was an avenue for me to get out of the house and also feel better. So that's how I got introduced to Restore. And that's how I ended up there through knee surgery. And then fast forward, I ended up having 4 more knee surgeries all
Oh,
around the patellas, 2 on the right, 2 on the left. It's all about the patellas. As a female with our Q angle hip to knee ratio, it puts a lot of stress on the patella. And so overuse and not taking care of my mobility and flexibility and all those things that matter now more than ever, it put me in that situation. And so in 2022, I had the 4 knee surgeries. And basically what they did was they took stem cells called bone marrow aspirate concentrate stem cells from my tibial plateau, which is at the top of your tibia, like the top of your shin bone, and injected it directly into my patella. And what that did was it reconstituted the bone more or less. It like helped it heal because I had a lot of edema in there. And so knowing that there's a good chance I'm going to need cartilage transplants at some point, but today's not the day, I knew that I had to make a change. I had to take better care of myself. I couldn't get away with anything anymore. So I created my own flexibility and mobility routine. I added in one by one things that I could handle and that were manageable for me at the time. Because if you were to walk into a store and you had never been exposed to your therapies, it's quite overwhelming.
mm-hmm.
So you have to start with something and stick with that one thing, and then you can build from there. And so that's how I got more and more involved. Then I started doing the IV drips. I got more involved with the hyperbaric. I did more with the NAD. I did the biomarking testing to see about the foods that I was eating and what was inflammatory for me and what was helpful for me and what vitamins and minerals I responded well to help heal my body and keep the inflammation down. And what I can say after the last 5 years, because it's been about 5 years now, I am better than ever.
That's amazing.
My last climb on Manaslu was the best my knees have done. And it has everything to do with all these little things stacking up. Everything just stacks and builds on one of the other, and everything complements each other. Now, listen, I'm a working gal. I don't have time to sit at the studio for hours, although I have on weekends with my laptop, just so we're clear. It's a great place. They got strong Wi-Fi if you need to. So when you're getting your IV, you can do work. It's not a total dead time there. You have to just sit there. But I was able to working remote and adding the therapies into my life because I could see the difference. And for me, it was very important to be able to continue playing at a high level. I am not this, world-class athlete. I'm an amateur athlete
I
doing
mean,
extraordinary things
yeah,
because
okay,
I've
that's
stuck
fair.
with it, and I put the time in and I do the work. And so that is why I am performing at a very high level. And all of these things have added value to my life and my athletic career longevity.
I love this. And what a perfect segue into the journey to Mount Manaslu. So you started out as a pretty competitive athlete. I imagine you're still a pretty competitive climber because that kind of, ethos doesn't leave. But let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in climbing later in life, and how did it lead you to the one of the tallest mountains in the world.
So that's a great question. Everybody asks, how does a city slicker like me from Philadelphia get involved in mountaineering? So it was 2016 November, and I was in between jobs. I had a big ortho job with Biomet that got bought by Zimmer. And then I had another lot lined up with a company called Nevro out of California, a spinal cord stim. And I took a month off and I went in and I hiked into Everest Base Camp. And
You just happened to be near Everest Base Camp.
it was on my mind because this company based in New Zealand, I'd been to New Zealand, I'd done a cycling trip of the South Island, I'd gone to Patagonia, South America, and they had just launched the the Everest Base Camp trip, and it happened to line up in November.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when I was there, the day 4 or 5, something like this, it was 9 years ago, so it's hard to remember everything, but I mustered just 20 seconds of insane courage. I walked up to a complete stranger, this woman. I saw her out of the corner of my eye. She looked so different than me because she was perfect. This hair flowing, full makeup glam, red lipstick. And I thought, who is this woman looking like this? And we are looking like a ragamuffin gang, sweaty, no shower, happy hour kind of a look, right? And I'm thinking, I have to meet this woman. There's something about her. So I walked up, like I said, I introduced myself, and she told me why she was there. She was there climbing a 6,000-meter peak called Lobache, and she was there to train for Everest in the spring. She was trying to become the oldest Indian woman to climb Everest and also go after what's called climbing the 7 summits, which I just completed last year. So that includes Everest, Denali, Karstens, and Concagua Vincent. So you go all over the world, and on each continent, you hit the highest peak. And so that is how I got into this. Totally random, but that chance encounter changed the trajectory of my life. And because of her, and we're still in touch to this day, because of her, my life changed for the better.
So
And so, how
you were
powerful was that?
incredible. So I mean, you were a solid, competitive athlete. And how old were you when you started this mountaineering journey?
Well, I met her in November 2016. I was 36.
Okay.
And then when we finished, 10 days later, we met back in Kathmandu at a coffee shop called the Himalayan Java. And we sat there for an hour and she told me what to do. She said, you got to break it down. Start with Kilimanjaro, low stakes, not a lot of mountaineering experience, but it's on a higher altitude. It was 19,300 feet and change. And she said, see how you do. See how your body reacts. See if you like it. It's basically more or less a hike. There's no real skill involved, but see how you do at altitude. And so that's what I did. And then she said, the next one you're going to do this, and the next one you're going to do this. And so when you go after any big pursuit, you got to break it down. It's so easy to be overwhelmed, whether it's 7 summits, Manaslu, or walking into a restore, literally. It's so overwhelming, but you got to break it down, and you got to have the right people, the experts who can guide you. But then you also have to be open to learning and trying something new, which I was.
So you're 36 years old. You've decided, I'm going to start mountaineering. How did this get you to Everest and then Manaslu? Manaslu is the 8th largest peak?
8th highest, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what was that journey like, getting you into this? And you also mentioned something just a minute ago, that you felt the best that you ever have at 45
Mhm.
on this 8th highest peak in the world.
Mhm.
Walk us through that. Talk us through your training, how you were using Restore. How'd you get here?
So one of the things I would say, just to back up real quick about how did I go from one to the next.
Yeah.
So each mountain builds on the other. Each one brings a new skill set that you have to be able to learn and kind of check the box, as I would like to say, before you go on to the next one. So each one builds on the next one. And so for me, what happened after Kilimanjaro, I went to Elbrus in 2019 in Russia. And then COVID happened. And so everything got derailed. And then I did a side project in Ecuador in the volcanoes in 2021, February. And then everything kind of hit the fan for me. I was training hard through triathlon and trying to do all the things, which was a mistake. not load managing at all because I had never heard of the word. But in any case, and then I ended up with the knee surgeries. But 6 months later, after my, fourth knee surgery, I went on to climb Vinson in Antarctica, where the stakes were quite high. Heavy packs, heavy loads, big, not only big loads on the back, but also in a sled behind you that you're pulling. And being on a fixed line with a Jumar. So all of these things were new for me, and I was broken. I probably should not have been there, but I went anyways because at some point I had to rip the Band-Aid, no pun intended, off and just start and just go for it. So anyways, then that led to Denali 6 months later, and then in Concagua 6 months later, and then Everest 6 months later, and then Carson's. And so I did 5 of the 7 summits in 22 months.
Wow.
And so what happened was from there, I was going to ride the Tour de France in 2020. And, clearly COVID happened. So that was knocked off. So I did that this summer. So most of the year was spent on the bike training for the Tour de France third week. And then I have some plans for next year and everything's still working through, but I didn't feel comfortable not being high again without picking up some of these other pursuits. And so I went for it. It was kind of short notice, 6 weeks. I was questioning if it was the right thing, if I had enough time, if I could build everything I needed to build. I also was sleeping in a hypoxic tent so I could acclimate at home, which basically is a tent that sucks out the oxygen. It's a generator that sucks out the oxygen, for lack of better words. And you sleep at varying altitudes and increasing altitudes over 6 weeks. And so I showed up like hair on fire, being my typical self, and showed up with and I said this today to someone, I didn't feel ready, right? I didn't feel ready coming into this, although I did everything in my power to do it. But one of the things I reminded myself is ready is not a feeling, it's a decision. You have to decide you're going to be there, you're going to go all in, and you're going to give it everything you got.
Mm-hmm.
As I led up, I was at the studios around Philadelphia, the one in the suburbs in Plymouth meeting, and then also in Center City here, doing all kinds of things like the Niagen drips, the cryotherapy, the red lights, the IVs, the regular IVs. And I couldn't do HBOT because HBOT we weren't sure if it would counteract what I was trying to do with the altitude
Right. I was
simulation.
going to ask that. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
curious.
And so it'd be curious, it would be a great study, but I couldn't risk it to
Yeah,
see,
totally.
adding more oxygen and the red blood cells increasing as well,
Yeah.
what that would do. Would it counteract or would it just be a value add? I wasn't sure. I couldn't take the risk.
Yeah, that's wise.
But I did everything else. And so typically leading up to a climb, something goes wrong. Swelling of the knees, the hip flexor gets ticked off, some sort of Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, something happens that knocks me off about 2 weeks prior to my trip. This was the first time that I didn't have a setback leading up to a climb.
Mm.
Was it the Niagen? Was it this? Was it that? I'm not sure. But I think everything collectively helped me get to the finish line. I should say the start line, healthy and uninjured.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask about your therapies. We've got some slides that kind of highlight what you were up to during not only your training, but also post for your recovery. But before I do that, can you just generally describe what training looks like for you for one of these summits? Is it like hours every day? I mean, you have a job, you're a VP of a pretty important company. Like, how do you schedule in your training? What does that look like? Are you at the gym? You're in Philly, so there's not a lot of mountains there that you can practice on. What does that look like?
So I would say about 90% has been done inside for all of them, whether it's Everest, Manaslu, whatever. And what I would say is because I have to load manage, and for those who don't understand what load management is, you have to get off your feet. You have to literally rest. And so for me and my coach and my team that I've built over the years is that I can still continue at a very high level every day with one day off. So 6 days on, one day off by load managing, swimming, biking. I do the intervals on the bike. I do Bikram yoga. I lift 3 days a week. And then I build up to different rucking hours, pounds, and so duration and frequency.
And so
So,
rucking, just for clarity, is you've got a pack on your back and you add
correct.
weight to it over time.
Correct.
Yep.
So in my backpack, this time I built up to 30 pounds and I'm about 142, just for reference. I'm 5'5". So I'm not this tall, big person. I'm pretty small. Small but mighty. And so I would do one day outside, and we have this amazing park in Philadelphia called Forbidden Drive, Fairmount Park, where it's undulating. So I would walk because it's important to be able to move over terrain.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would do 2 to 3 days on a stair mill, anywhere between level 4 and level 6 with
Torture
30
machine.
pounds on my back, which
Torture
I would build
machine.
up to, right? I'd build 15, the next week was 20, the next week was 25, and 30, and so forth. And I would keep that pace on level 4, 5, or 6, or whatever it ended up being with the weight. And it started at 1 hour, and my biggest workout for this one was 3.5 hours. And
Oof.
at every hour, I break for about 5 to 7 minutes. Bathroom, water, snack, just get the pack off, sit down, whatever. And so strategically, we would place, you really want to be able to stack those rucks together, because when you're out there, you're going to be stacking days, one day on top of the other, right? And you don't have breaks, really. And so, but in the beginning of the week, I would start off with the swim, right? We'd start off with yoga. We would start off with the bike intervals, right? So Tuesday or Wednesday. And then as the weekend would come, those would be the biggest days, Saturday, Sunday. And then, 3 or 4 days stacked together.
So I love this idea, first of all, that you have figured out how to strategically train and also get off of your feet and
Mm-hmm.
rest. And
Mm-hmm.
also adding in these recovery strategies that keep you week after week after week being able to put that pack back on and get back on that step
Mm-hmm.
mill. Because if anybody that has ever used a step mill knows that is a very challenging machine for even 10 or 20 minutes. So to think about doing it for 3.5 with a pack with 30 pounds on your back is going to do some serious damage, and then hopefully recovery to your legs so that you're able to go out and do it outside. All right, let's pivot a little bit into some of the therapies that you have used. So you said that you started out with cryotherapy way back in the day, and we've got a couple of slides on these moving forward. But it seems like cryotherapy was kind of like your gateway drug into
It was.
the restore therapies, and
Mm-hmm.
then compression. And then we'll talk a little bit about these IV therapies, including Niagen, which I think is a really interesting one, especially because you felt like this particular routine was really helpful for you in the pursuit of Manaslu and that you felt the best. So
Mm-hmm.
let me just walk us through some of these. And these are your words that you gave us as to why you think that it's really helpful. So let's start with cryo. So you walked into the Restore a couple of years ago and you were like, my knees are hurting. I have pain. What did the cryo do for you, and how have you been using it since you started?
So I would say the biggest thing with my patellas is keeping the inflammation down.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is when you have arthritis, you're bone on bone, right? Like the cartilage rubs away and you have basically these cartilage defects, right? So the exposed bone. So ultimately, the exposed bone is what hurts. And what happens is when the bone is exposed, you end up with what's called like bone marrow edema, which is
Mm-hmm.
swelling in the actual bone. And so it creates swelling in your joint. So the biggest thing for me was to be able to control the swelling, because then your knee doesn't feel right when it's swollen of any kind, right? Fluid in the knee doesn't feel good. I can almost handle the pain. I can't handle the swelling because it doesn't feel right. But keeping the swelling down and the pain down, the inflammation down, has enabled me to continue. And so, and that's been a lot of things, right? It's the cryo, it's the IV drips, it's been my diet, really
Mm-hmm.
focusing on my diet, eliminating a lot of stuff. I'm not eating out like I used to, no alcohol. I still have a little bit of sugar, but not tons. And so
Good for
all
the
of these,
training. It's good for the training.
that's right, all of these things have added to this. And so this has just been another weapon I have to keep me like in check, like the
Yeah.
swelling down.
We have a great question in the chat from Wesley saying, how often are you doing cryo each week? I know we, in our Restore Labs literature, showed that we saw diminished inflammation, like we could measure inflammation declines at about 6 times or so per month.
Hmm.
So that's like once, twice a week. How often are you in the chamber?
I would say twice a week
Mhm.
because I think it's tough to do anything once a week and see
Sure.
results. Doesn't matter what it is. If you were to work out once a week, are you going to see results? You're good for a day or two or three, but then like, okay, same
Mhm.
thing. If you were to think about diet, if you were to only eat well one day a week, it's helpful, but to really see results, you got to do it a few times. So, anyways, I would say minimum 2 days a week. And the reality is, it's only a 3 minute thing. I mean, obviously,
Right.
you got to get there, you got to drive there, you got to change. So um, it's a little bit of a process, right? It's a little bit of a time suck, but it's only 3 minutes at the end of the day.
Yep.
Everybody has 3 minutes. If you have no time for anything else, 3 minutes you got.
I know it's like as long as it takes to brush your teeth, right? So it's
Yes.
good.
Hmm.
Um, did you, when you started in your cryo chamber routine, did you immediately feel relief, or did it take some time and consistency before you were like, no, this is really working?
I think everything compounds, but I would say, you feel good
Hmm.
immediately. Like you come out and you just feel great. That's what I think that's like the draw. Like you come out, you're like, wow, like that's awesome. And I think, but if as you do it, like if you have something swollen, like if you have a swollen knee or an ankle or whatever, it takes a few days for swelling to go down. So
Hmm.
I think initially, I mean, look, initially when I had the core membership, which is like the daily, I was almost there every day. Because what else was I doing? It was COVID, right? We were there
Right.
every day or every other day getting a cryo session. So, but realistically speaking, it's twice a week because
Hmm.
people travel, they have work, kids, whatever, commitments. So twice a week is a great place to start, I think.
Awesome. All right, before we move on to your next therapy, do you have a song?
Yes. Oh my God, I think I've driven everybody crazy with my song, which is Rome by the B-52s. It's a great
Nice.
cryo song for what that's worth for everybody out there.
That's fantastic. Throwing it back to the B-52s. I love that. Okay, so next up, compression. And you said you started to pair these early
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
So what was going on with the compression? I mean, I think it's kind of obvious that, your legs, you're working so hard on that step mill, just like moving the fluid is really beneficial, probably also really helpful for your knee. But talk us a little bit more about what's going on with that compression
So,
and how it was helpful.
so this is another great therapy. I loved it so much, I ended up buying a pair. So I initially started doing these with my IVs when I mean, I did them initially, right? Because I was later on the IVs, but it's a great pair because they're sitting there. But the compression's huge because specifically if you fly a lot for work,
Yeah.
I don't know about the rest of you, but my legs swell almost every time. Like I got to wear compression tight
Mm.
socks, sleeves, whatever on the plane since I was like 30. So this is not a new thing.
Yeah.
And so what I find is it just moves all the fluid out of your legs.
Mhm.
And also for a very long time, I was in the operating room, like 13 years in the operating room. And so when you stand on your feet all day,
Everything
your
moves.
legs swell.
Mhm.
It's not just me. You can ask any operating room nurse, they will tell you. Their
Yeah.
legs swell. Half the gang is wearing some sort of compression tight or sleeve. Because when you're on your feet and on concrete, it just takes its toll.
Yep. So then the next one that you kind of keep alluding to are your drip nutrients. And I have to
Hmm.
say, you gave us permission to do this. So
Hmm.
we went in and we checked the ingredients that you have periodically put into your drip. Probably, I would guess, at the encouragement of the nurses that were around you and what you were feeling day to day. But we actually have 2 slides here of the ingredients that you used. Um, was there any that you're like, I was just relying on this one? It really seemed to help me. It was in my drip every time. It was super helpful. And we'll talk about Niagen and NAD in just a second.
Sure. So the big thing here again was like muscle recovery, inflammation control, and muscle repair. So the tissue, tendons, ligaments, that kind of stuff, muscle repair. So these were big, right? Vitamin D is great for that. Actually, I think that was an IM shot,
Yep.
and I don't think that was exactly in my IV drip. But anyways, I still get that. And they said, back when COVID hit in 2020, they said if you have good levels of vitamin D, you were less likely to get sick. And if you did get sick, you were less likely to have a really bad case.
This is true.
Whether that's true.
It is true. I'm a vitamin D
Okay.
researcher from way back in the
Okay.
day, and that data
Okay.
is actually quite solid. Yeah, it's really good for
Okay.
immune health in general.
So I also started that 5 years ago. And so I try and do that every 4 to 6 weeks. It's one shot, it's quick, it takes, a minute or less.
Yep.
So I do that. So that's a big one for inflammation. Vitamin C is a big one.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll do a high dose vitamin C.
Ooh, that's in here.
And then sometimes I just want a lot of different things to cover a lot of different bases.
Yeah.
And so that's when you'll see some of these other things, amino acids, vitamins, what have you. And so all of it connects. And so for my IVs, I typically try and go in once a week. I can't always get there. Sometimes it's every other week, but usually either 2 to 4 times a month, I get an
Mhm.
IV.
Yep.
And I used to think probably 5 years ago, oh, I think I drink a lot of fluids. I do my electrolytes. I'm all over it. But I will tell you that I notice a difference as I've gotten older. And I don't know if it's just because I'm working out more now than ever at 45 than I did at 40 or when I was doing triathlon. But I'm putting like in my big weeks, I'm putting in between 13, 14 hours.
Mhm.
And so it is very hard to get all of that through water and electrolytes. Because if you don't time it right, if you're not drinking a sip or two every 15 minutes and you kind of guzzle here, guzzle there, it can go right through you. And so I found for me personally, I would even notice it in my blood pressure. My blood
Mhm.
pressure would drop. I could be dizzy. Sometimes if I was lifting heavy, I would kind of feel like I was going to pass out. And it had a lot to do with the fact that I was dehydrated.
Mhm. Yep. It's one of the things people ask me all the time, like, what should I put in my IV? And I'm like, obviously, the number one ingredient is going to be the saline or the
Hmm.
lactated ringers that you would,
Hmm. Hmm.
dissolve all of your other nutrients in, because we are, for the most part, chronically walking around dehydrated anyways.
Yes.
But then if
Yes.
you're exercising so much, just the loss from sweat alone can be
Hmm.
so impactful, plus all of those electrolytes.
Hmm.
So yeah, totally, thinking about the hydration first and then the nutrients that you're going to be blowing through because you are working out so hard. It's also, you're 5'5", you said it's hard to get all of those nutrients through food alone as
Hmm.
well. So just making sure that you're topped off is super helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so this was new for you. So you were doing NAD for a while and then have
Hmm.
switched to Niagen. It sounded like pretty close to before you went up
Yeah.
Manaslu.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about this and your experience with your Niagen drip.
So, if anybody's ever done Niagen or NAD, I would tell you it's not like a normal IV drip. It's you kind of suffer a little bit, right? Like the NAD, if you feel it in your
The NAD
gut,
is tough. The
you
NAD
kind
is
of feel
tough.
like it in your head, maybe in your throat. The Niagen, I felt more in my jawline, in my ears, in my mouth. And so it's not comfortable. But I think the way people have to think about NAD or Niagen is that it is a long-term play.
Mhm.
You're not going to necessarily walk out of there. You might have better sleep. You might feel a little bit zippier because you got some fluids, but ultimately NAD is a long-term play.
Yep.
This is like, a 401k savings account.
I'm stealing that from you, Megan. That is a great way to put it. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
You're going to feel like a little zippier, like if you came out of cryo, right? Or you're going to feel a little bit zippier if you maybe, the next day. I always feel these the next day, not necessarily that day, but like I feel it in my workout. You feel like a little looser. You feel like you got a little bit more pep. And so that's the best way to think about these. And so this is a little bit, I don't want to call it, it's not painful, but it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But you have to have the mindset knowing, okay, my goal is to be whatever. I want to do something. I want to have more focus. I want to get rid of brain fog. I want to have better sleep, whatever your thing is, because it hits a lot of these different things. And I think, I'm not sure exactly the age, but I know at 40, your body's ability to convert the energy, the ATP energy, really sharply declines.
30. It's age 30.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm
Yeah.
10 years off, 30. And so knowing that that's what's going to give you the energy is that ability to and I might be butchering this with the science,
You're
but the
right. You
ability to
got it. Keep
convert into
going.
energy is what's going to, help you sustain an athletic career, maybe feeling more focused at work, more present, better sleep, because at the end of the day, if you're sleeping great, everything else just seems so much better in life, doesn't it? I mean, nailing your sleep is like, the holy grail.
Yep.
And so this helps with that as well. And so if you can nail your sleep, everything in life gets better, and you're able to do your workouts or maybe stay more consistent or get your steps in or feel a bit more sharp, get up a little bit earlier, whatever your thing is. And so I think that's what this adds. This is what this is all about.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't,
so
I couldn't agree more.
and it also helped me in my whole goal, which was to climb, right? So like supporting all the repair and the reduced oxidative stress and all of the things that lead to inflammation that I have to kind of quell to keep under control so that I can stay in the game. And so
Yep.
this is part of that thing. And we did this, it wasn't an every week thing. I think we did 3 leading up to the trip, so every other week.
Yeah, that's what we typically recommend is somewhere between every 2 to 4 weeks for the Niagen. And you're exactly correct. And it's so interesting. It's mimicking the research that we're doing at Restore Labs, where one of the signals that we're seeing with Niagen specifically is that it's really seeming to help improve sleep, which
Hmm.
honestly wasn't really an outcome that I was expecting. I figured it was going to improve energy because, it's a precursor to ATP production. And I was thinking of all of these things and ways in which the Niagen and sometimes the NAD can be really helpful. But sleep does seem to be one of the areas that people are really doing better. And we measured it with some sleep trackers as well. So yeah, really, really interesting there. And if you're an athlete, you know that sleep is your superpower if you
It
can
is.
do it and do it well.
It
So
truly is.
yeah. All right. So I want you to talk us through the climb here because it does seem like there are some folks that are in the chat who has family members that are climbers, but experiencing this, especially the 8th highest peak in the world, must be truly something else. So talk to us a little bit about what's going on here, how you got up the mountain, how you were feeling. What is it like?
So, like I mentioned, so this was a special situation in the sense that this was a what we call a flash expedition. I went with a company called Furtenbach Adventures, who's known for these flash quick expeditions because they believe that you are safer to be on the mountain, for less time.
Last
You
time.
risk
Yeah.
injury and you risk sickness the longer you're there.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't have 5 to 6 weeks to take off for a mountaineering trip. They have careers, family, all of the things. And so they enable us to get there, get in, and get out if weather is good. And so this trip was extremely fast for me. I mean, we had more or less 5 acclimatizing days, 2 rest days, and then 2 days, 6 hours to be exact for our summit push. Typically, a summit push on an 8,000-meter peak is between like 5 and 7 days. And we did it in 2 days, six hours. And part of the reason was we were under the gun with some weather. And so Manaslu is known for its avalanche risk and danger. And so there was one amazing weather window we had, and we had to go for it. And so we skipped Camp 2, which is where, in past years, it could be dangerous and there's avalanche risk, which isn't going to just knock out one person. It could wipe out the whole camp.
Sure.
And Camp 4 had too much snow to build a camp. And so we pushed from Camp 3. And so there was about 4,500 feet of elevation gain on the summit day. So round trip from Camp 3, it was about 13 hours, just over 13 hours.
Wow.
And our lead guy decided, we don't want to take any more risk. We're going to go all the way down, which I didn't know when we started. I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't know that was actually going to be the plan. And so, you go 13 hours round trip from Camp 3. I picked up, right about Camp 3. I left it there. Some people can go down with it. I did not. I just said I didn't need it. I'm going to go without because it's also heavy. And then I think it took me about, I laid in the tent and gathered my things and all, maybe it might have been an hour and a half, 2 hours, get yourself together. And then you continue to go down for 3 hours or so. And then I had some dinner in Camp 1 and then I continued down to base camp. And so it was almost at the end of the day, it was close to a 24-hour day, which was tough, right? So like mentally, you got to hang in there. When you're exhausted, things hurt, like equipment goes awry, your feet are killing you, the knees are swelling, whatever. But I always tell people mountaineering is probably one of the hardest sports I've ever done because you're not going super fast, but the altitude makes it hard. You're
Mm,
moving slowly but rhythmically, and you have to be able to break it down. You've got to stay in control of the mental game.
yeah.
And like everything else in life, I always tell people you got to break it down and simplify 1 hour at a time. And if you can't get to the hour, it's one step at a time. Like when I was on Denali, I was literally heading into Camp 4 and I was like, I don't know if I got it 2 more steps, but I got one more step. And that was the motto for like the last
I don't know,
hour.
like, yeah, just gave me chills. Yeah.
So, like everything in life, break it down when anything is overwhelming. And so that's what you have to do. Break it down hour by hour, take a break when needed. You're resting, you're not quitting, you're just resting. And so also performance on summit day matters. You know, like you kind of have to let your body acclimate to this altitude. And our base camp was 16,400, just for what that's worth. You know, it's pretty high up there. And so, you know, you go through a couple rotations, which is what we did, and then we rested, and then we went forward. And I was super overwhelmed with our summit push strategy. I thought, oh my God, you know, did I have enough training in the bank? You know, you know, having hypoxic hours, like, I don't know. And then it was super aggressive and aggressive push from Camp 3. Typically, the summit bids are 3,000 feet. You know, on Everest, it's about 3,000 feet, and same thing with the others. And so I was a little bit overwhelmed. But again, like I told you before, I didn't say feel ready. Ready isn't, you know, a feeling, it's a decision. And so you have to decide that you're ready and commit and go all in. And I wasn't out there alone, right? I had a teammates, there was 8 of us on the team, an extremely strong team, an expert world-class guide, and you have your Sherpas who really are there with you. They are in it with you, they are helping you, they're supporting you. They are the backbone of the team. I'm pretty sure my guy at the end wanted to wring my neck by the time I got down to base camp, but we are friends forever. These people are the most kind, hardworking individuals you'll ever meet. And it's an honor to climb with them.
Can you tell us what's going on in these pictures here? Where are you?
Sure. Okay. So top left, I think it's the same for everybody. Top left with the sign at the top is the summit. Unlike Everest or Denali, where there's almost like a little bit of a platform at the summit, it's literally one person at a time, where you kind of hook your carabiner in and you touch the top with like your finger. So that's that. So you can kind of see the sign right there. That's actually the very tippy top. We pulled this out. We actually left around 8 p.m. and we got to the summit just after 5 a.m. in the dark. We weren't sure how long it was going to take us. It snowed the whole way up. And so this was the best photo we could get. It wasn't great until we kind of started going down. But that's my Sherpa with me. His name is Dawa Lama. And we are connected for life. He's an amazing guy and a tremendous climber. And then down below that was base camp, and that is my tent. It's a walk-in tent. It's super luxurious from the perspective of I have a cot with my sleeping bag on top. You are not on the ground. That is uber, you know, luxury, if you're asking me. Inside, there's like 2 kind of compartments, almost like 2 rooms. And in the front part, there's a desk with a chair. So there's also Wi-Fi at base camp. And so for those who can't completely shut it down, I'm not in a position where I can completely shut it down. You have the desk and the chair to work from with Wi-Fi, which is amazing. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to get the job done. And so that's me in front of my tent with the restore sign with the prayer flags. And then top right here was at what we called crampon point, which is where you put on your crampons on the way to Camp 1. So this was about 50 minutes from base camp, about 1,000 feet up at 17.4. And then if you were to kind of keep following the path in between, you can see kind of to the right, there's a big rock. Camp 1 is right that way. And then here, the second photo down on the right is me at Camp 1 doing a little riff about our day and how we're feeling. And then the furthest one down on the right is me at the crampon point, giving a little shout out to all my teammates, seeing how we're feeling. This was day 2.
Awesome. I think we have a little video here. I just want to make sure that I have the audio. I think we're good here.
What a view. The clouds have rolled in, which is okay. And we still had a beautiful day here. A bunch of ascending with the Jumar, some tough sections. But we all made it together as a team, which was great. And here we are just taking a quick break before we head down. Hey there, Stefan. Awesome. And that looks like the way up to Camp 3. So anyways, so that's what Camp 2 looks like. And like I said, right now we're going to rest for some minutes and then we'll descend and spend the next night down at Camp 1.
So cool. I just love watching your face as you relive that too. That's so cool. All right. So now you're back and you're
Yeah.
recovering. So what does that look like for you? It looks like some slightly different therapies. Now it looks like we're building in the hyperbaric here.
Right. And so one thing is, I just want to even just stop for a second. So we flew down on a Tuesday. Like we hiked down after 2 days, like we summited down on Saturday. We hiked down on Monday to the village, Samagon, which was 4,700 feet of elevation decline or descent, I should say. And that is where we picked up the helicopter to fly back to Kathmandu, weather permitting, which it worked, thank God. And we flew out. And that night I flew back to Philly. So just for those people who are East Coast, it is 19 hours in the air. I flew from Kathmandu to Dubai, which is about 4.5 hours, and then from Dubai to Newark, which was 14.5 hours with about 2 hours layover in Dubai, and then an hour train ride from Newark to Philly. So
Right.
I came back, I showered, I did a couple hours of work, and then I crashed at 2 p.m. and I woke up at midnight, had a salad, and then I went back to bed. And so the next day, Thursday, I came in and got an IV drip because immediately I knew I was dehydrated. Like there's no way you can keep up with the fluids. You know, I love our airline stewardesses, but let me tell you, like there's not enough water that they can give you, and they're not giving you the full bottle. So, you know, you gotta like try and do your best to grab as much water as you can, juices and seltzers or whatever to keep yourself hydrated on something like this. And so I came in the next day, that Thursday, immediately and went for an IV, knowing I think my blood pressure was like 98/70. It was really low.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we did. And then adding in these other things, the compression was immediate because my legs were swollen from the flying. Like I told you, it wasn't just like some swelling. I had a little bit of swelling. It wasn't horrible, but some swelling in the knees. But my legs were so swollen from flying and being in the air for so long.
Yeah.
So that was also essential. Like, so IV drip the next day, compression, I was way too tired on that Wednesday. The next day, immediately, an hour a day for the next week. And you don't always have to do it for an hour every day, but in this situation, I did it every day for the next week. So for what that's worth, to help flush my legs out from the flying, from the climb, from all the activity. And so then you start adding these other services in, because the other thing is your body's in a little bit of a shock, right? Like you've just put it through this, and my energy, like, you know, it's a joke to say for me to go 2,000 steps for that first week every day was hard. Like if I went from the bed to the couch, that was a win.
Yeah.
Right. Working from bed. So anyway, so adding each of these things in slowly was what helped. I mean, I couldn't do everything at once. I literally did not have the energy to do it.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, so then you add in these other things, the IVs with the cryo, with the compression and so forth.
Okay. So we're coming up to the last couple of minutes here. You are just such an inspiration from being not only an incredibly like normal human, but also such an incredible athlete, and being able to manage both of those things at the same time with a full-time job, with responsibilities in your day-to-day, and also doing these epic expeditions. So give us some takeaways. Like, how can we take what you do every day and bring it into our day-to-day?
Sure. So the biggest thing I would start with is just be open, like when it comes to restore, I should say, just being open and learning about the different therapies.
Mm-hmm.
Try one thing. You don't have to go in and try everything and do everything. See what feels right for you. Like for me, it was the cryo. That's what felt right. I felt great. And then I was inquisitive. You know, I kept asking. I was curious about the different modalities, the different therapies. And then it kind of grew from there. But just try one thing. You don't need everything. So one thing. Mm-hmm. And then focus on for yourself and your health journey, one thing better, 1% every day. Whether it's your mobility, your flexibility, your water intake, lowering your carbs, getting your steps in, one thing. Everything starts with one move. It's so easy to get, overwhelmed with your health journey. I know for me, it's certainly overwhelming. And if I had, talked to myself 5 years ago, I would have been like, this woman's nuts. I can't even with her. But that's why I go back to break it down, pick one thing and stick with it. Because the other piece of this is consistency trumps everything and frequency. Like you got to be able to stay consistent. You have to pick something that you can stick with and see results. Because like everything else, you can't eat good one time and expect to lose, 5, 10 pounds. You can't sleep great one night and feel like a hero all week. And so to me, it's the little things, staying consistent, pick one thing, get 1% better, search for that 1%. That'd be a really big takeaway for me and for your audience.
I truly appreciate that. I tell people all the time, all these like protocols and potions and tinctures and all these things, and everybody's just like chasing the next thing. And I'm just like, if we could just be consistent, pick one thing and get really consistent with it. That goes with training, that goes with all of our therapies. The more often you use them, the more consistently you use them, the better off you are. So I so appreciate that, Megan. If you have questions for Megan, please feel free to put them in the chat. There are a couple that I want to bring to you, Megan, right away. Is this idea of heart rate zone training. When you're doing your training, are you in a specific zone, or are you just like, nope, I'm in this like 4 to 10 intensity range. I know that I need so much in my pack, and like I actually just need to get through 3 hours today because that's the most important thing for my training. How do you sort of set that up from an intensity perspective?
Well, I think it depends on what your goal is. Because, if you are looking to lose weight and feel great, 3 times a week at 40 minutes, like an F45 class, might be something you need, right? Like a quick, hit of energy, getting your heart rate up. But then if you're looking for some more endurance, like activities, like whether it's running, cycling, swimming, you really have to build your aerobic base. And I can tell you, I got it wrong in my 30s doing triathlon. In the Olympic distance, the 70.3, I got it wrong. I can tell you. I trained too hard and my heart rate was too high. And so one of the things when I left my triathlon coach and I picked up my mountaineering coach. And one of the things that we had to do was build my base, which means zones 1 and 2. If you're working off of 5 zones, you're looking at those bottom 2 zones. So if I'm 45 right now, these numbers are gonna be a little bit off, but really I want to keep my heart rate from my zone 2 work around 120. That is the target. Now, my max 120 range would, let's say, be around 130 heartbeat per minute, but really trying to keep it at 120 because you can sustain that. But you have to build it because when you're out there mountaineering, you are not going that fast and your heart rate doesn't jump that fast. It just can't get that high. And so really building that zone 2 aerobic base was essential for me in order to be able to do this stuff. And so 80%, I would say, was done in zone 2 and even zone 1, zone 2. Because outside, rucking, undulating, it wasn't always uphill, right? It was undulating with weight. So I would go in between zones 1 and 2.
And kind of a similar question is come from the Q&A here is, what kind of equipment do you need to start training for this? It looked like you had a lot of gear when you were out on the mountain, but it also sounds like very approachable when you're training in Philly. So what do you need in order to get started in this sport?
So I would go back to how, this catalyst, this woman from India told me, start with a pair of hiking boots and like poles, right? A backpack. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can buy it used. You can go to the REI, whatever. Start walking with weight. Pick a pair of great shoes. I have really struggled with this. If anybody follows me on Insta or Facebook, my God, it's been a nightmare. But in any case, finding a pair of boots that work for you, that are really good, like solid boots, which give you stability and support, would be the next thing. And then, as you go on, right, it would be easy for me to say, well, you need a down suit, 2 -40 bags, then you need a harness, then you need an axe, then you need 20 carabiners, then start like with step 1. Get the hiking boots, pick up a backpack that you can go to the gym or buy a weight for 15 pounds and start walking in the woods, on hills, just walking around your neighborhood. That's where I would start. Because it's so easy to get overwhelmed. If I had thought about when I met her thinking about climbing Everest, it blew my mind, right? How was I going to do this? I had no idea where to start. How would I, right? I didn't come from a mountaineering family and I don't know anybody doing it at the time. So start with a pair of hiking boots. Start simple. You need a pair of shorts, pair of pants, shirt, and you're good to go. Start there.
And where, if people wanted to get started, where would they go? You're in Philly. Did you search on the internet for a mountaineering coach? Like, how do you get involved in this kind of a sport?
So when you start, like let's say again at Kilimanjaro, you meet people, right? And I had this great mentor in Sangeeta Ball when I first started, right? Because I started with Kilimanjaro, right? Hiking boots, poles, and a backpack. But with Elbrus, the next one I did, which was in Russia, the highest peak in Europe, it would require a new level of skills. So crampons, which are these spiky things that you put on the end of your boots and you walk in, that gives you traction on the ice. I would need a harness, carabiners, an axe, a helmet, gloves, different gloves. And so you build on it. And so a couple places to look. REI, in the States is in a lot of the big towns across the country.
Yep.
There's also another great store called backcountry.com, which is online only. And they've got a great return policy and all the things. And so if it doesn't fit, you send it back, that you can keep exchanging. And they have a really nice program. So there's two options there if REI doesn't have it, because they're not going to have all of like an 8,000 meter boot off the shelf type of thing. So that's another place to start. And then, if you just start Googling, there's a couple big mountaineering coaching companies. One is called Uphill Athlete, and the other one is called Evoke Endurance. My coach happens to be with Evoke Endurance, but they're both excellent, and they both will help you prepare for whatever endeavor you have set for yourself.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story. You're getting so much love in the chat here from people saying, thank you so much. What a beautiful story. So inspirational. Just thank you for being here, for sharing your incredible journey over not only your early life as an athlete, but also just as an inspiration, I think, for so many of us that are in our 30s and 40s, thinking about how do we keep this going and how do we train and how do we keep a full-time job and also be able to do all of these things. So for so many different reasons, Megan, you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being part of our Restore family. Just a couple of announcements here before we sign off is that Restore Labs is actually recruiting for subjects for one of our studies. If you or one of your community members that also comes to Restore has been diagnosed with long COVID, we're trying to understand how you are using our therapies. So this is in collaboration with Mass General in Boston. I know, Megan, you were talking a lot about being in lockdown during COVID, and we're trying to figure out how our therapies might be helpful. So if you, again, or a member of your community in their store family does have a long COVID diagnosis, please screenshot this, send it to them. We're trying to understand this better, as well as inform future studies. We actually have 2 studies with Mass General. One is looking at cryotherapy for long COVID, and we're just trying to understand how people are using these therapies. So please share and take the survey. And then also, next month, we are going to do a head-to-head between red light therapy and infrared sauna, our 2 photobiomodulation therapies that we have at Restore. So if you are interested in that, it's coming up on November 12th. You can scan here to register. And Megan, thank you so much for being such an inspiration and for sharing your story and for being a part of our Restore community.
Well, it's been an honor, and it wouldn't be possible without you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's been a total game changer for me, and it has helped keep me in the game, doing epic things year in and year out. And I couldn't do it without you guys.
Incredible. Megan, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to follow you on the socials?
So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Truthfully, I am not the most active, but I do check it all the time. I am on there. So please connect with me, link in with me. I'd love to be, someone that you can use as a resource or help you or give you encouragement, because I think I love to pay it forward and help people, as many people as I can. Impact is the name of the game, and I love helping as many people as possible.
All right, Megan, thank you so much. I think it's at Megan Rath 18, right? For Instagram?
So yeah, so Insta I think is Megan Rath 18, and then Facebook I think it's just Megan Rath, MEGANRATH.
Amazing. Megan, thank you so much. We are so excited to continue to support you. Where are you going next? What's your next mountain?
You know, I don't have that locked in, but what I will say is I did just get asked yesterday to go to Mount Washington in New Hampshire in January.
Oh, amazing. That's
So
my home. Yeah,
I
great.
think I might be doing that now next.
Incredible. It's not quite as high as Manaslu,
Not
but
quite as high, but it is supposed to be one of the coldest places on earth in January. So
it is
at least it has
ridiculous.
its own challenges.
I was gonna say, be careful. Bring your pick at your axes and your crampons because you definitely need it up there.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, team, thank you so much for joining us for another incredible No More, Do More. I am Dr. Rachele Pojednic. I'll see you back here next month. And in the meantime, restore, do more.